Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our awesome admins joining from all over the world. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to learn about how admins can take control of their Salesforce environments with the Salesforce Optimizer. My name is Leanne Templeman. I'm your trusty admin evangelist, and if you're on the Twitters, you can find me at Leandroid. And I'm joined by our rockstar Senior Director of Product Management, Jean-Baptiste Mincelli. JB looks after a number of the Salesforce features that you know and love, including the Salesforce Optimizer, and you can find JB at LinkedIn at Mincelli. So we're very excited to have our product owner on our webinar today, which means that we may be discussing some roadmap features and technologies. As always, please make all of your purchasing decisions regarding Salesforce based on currently available technology and not on any forward-looking statements. We're a very social team over at Salesforce Admins, and we love connecting with our awesome admin community. You can find us on Twitter at Salesforce Admins. Note that there is no I in admin, or with the hashtag AwesomeAdmin. If Twitter isn't your thing, we also share updates, webinars, and news on Facebook and LinkedIn. And all of our videos can be found at our YouTube channel, Salesforce Admins, including this one. This webinar will be recorded, as are all of our Salesforce Admins webinars. So if you want to rewatch this webinar, or if you have to step away from your computer, the recording and slides will be posted to the page where you registered, and the recording will be available on our YouTube channel. So to get back to the page that you registered, just go to this bit.ly at bit.ly/Salesforce Optimizer, I believe. So we'll be drilling into lots of details around the Salesforce Optimizer. And that means you'll have some questions possibly about the feature or information we're covering. Our awesome team of experts will be answering questions on the Success Community Group, Admin Webinar Group, which can be found at this bit.ly, Admin Webinar Group. And time provided, we're going to take some of those questions at the end of the webinar. We won't be leaving any question left behind. So if we don't get to your question on the group or on the webinar during the live broadcast, we will be following up on questions after we end the broadcast. But make sure not to wait till the end. Ask those questions as they come up, and we'll be answering and receiving them throughout the webinar. So what can you expect over the next 26 minutes or so? We'll be covering some core details about the Salesforce Optimizer, why we built it, and how it can impact your workload as a Salesforce admin. We'll get a demo from the product owner himself, Jean-Baptiste, a deep dive into what metrics and use cases the Optimizer encompasses, and how the Optimizer can help you in your transition to Lightning. Of course, we'll also share important resources and answer some of those questions from the Success Community Group at the end. So let's get started. When I talk to admins, they very often have 2 or 3 complaints that they hear most often from their end users, and that translate to admin complaints. And one of those is almost always that the users have trouble working in the app because they have so many fields on the page, and this causes confusion and inefficient page usage, which is a problem for end users and admins. But for most admins I talk to, they have a queue of Salesforce work that doesn't always allow them the time to assess and evaluate field usage and clean those up. This technical debt can pile up for admins, and the maintenance work, like field cleanup, keeps getting pushed out to the next cycle. And the answer for this is the Salesforce Optimizer. Salesforce Optimizer is the maintenance, productivity, and adoption app for Salesforce admins, which helps admins efficiently maintain customizations and decrease business and technical debt to help you get more value out of your Salesforce environment. Optimizer increases the productivity of admins and your end users and drives Salesforce usage to ultimately help you improve the company's bottom line. It's the fastest and most effective way for admins to get prioritized insights coupled with actionable recommendations and best practices. And the good news is that you can run it today. It's only 1 click from Salesforce Setup on desktop or the Salesforce A admin app, and you receive a report on over 25 org metrics. That includes insights, recommendations, best practices, tailored for your needs based on what's going on in your org. This tool is available in both Classic and Lightning for all professional, enterprise, performance, unlimited, and developer edition orgs and their sandboxes. However, it is only visible to users with admin permissions. So while Salesforce orgs all over the world have access to this report, I do want to note that the interface of the resulting report is in English. So now that we're all excited about the Optimizer report, let's take a look at how you can run and read your own Optimizer report with JB.
Awesome, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm gonna show you how to run it, and you're gonna see it's actually super simple. When Leanne said that's the fastest way to get insight in your org, we are actually not joking. I'm currently an admin logged in my Salesforce org. You guys probably know the Lightning interface by now, and we'll be chatting about that later. In Setup, if you scroll down, you have a link called Optimizer. I'm going to click on that link. I'm going to reach a landing page with Optimizer. You can learn more if you go to the Salesforce help page. We are just launching for this demo, so I'm going to click that button. I'm going to authorize the Salesforce Optimizer to connect to my org, and that's basically it. That's what you have to do to run the Optimizer. That's the beauty of it. It's super simple. It's one click, and you're gonna receive magically in your inbox a PDF from you to you. So just be on the lookout for that email. Check if it's not in your spam folder, and you will be able to get insight from your org. So I'm gonna go to my inbox. I have my Optimizer report here, and I'm gonna just do a quick preview to give you the structure and how to actually leverage that report. So if you go to the first page, you're gonna see all the metrics that we currently have today. And if we find something that might be looking funny or where we have specific recommendation, you're gonna usually have a small warning icon next to that specific section. So I'm gonna go to, let's say, one of those 5.2. Which was a bit reddish. And I'm going to show you how to read one of those specific sections. So this one is for reports and dashboards. So I talk to many admins, and usually users create reports, dashboards, maybe the one-time use like tissue, and they don't discard them, they don't delete them. So you end up with thousands of reports that probably are not used in your company. So that's maintenance burden, that tech debt that you want to get rid of. So in the report, we are actually outlining the unused report in that section. Each section is structured the same way. So we have basically what we found in your org. So in that case, we found 31 unused report. We usually lose the top 5. We list the top 5 directly in the report. You can see more in appendix. And then just below that, we have 2 additional sections, what you should do about it, and then resources to learn more. If you have a Premier Plus customer, we're going to outline even more specific resources that you have access to, such as accelerators and other Premier dedicated services. So that's pretty easy to run the report and to read it. As you see, it can be overwhelming the first time you run it. It might be a lot of things, a lot of threads. So we are actually working on making the consumption of the report easier. I'm going to talk about the roadmap in a minute, but I'm going to ask you to do a little homework today. Just run the readiness report, the Optimizer report today, and start taking control of your full org. So if I go back to the slide, I'm going to show you what are all the metrics that you can use to take that control on your org. So as you can see, we have a lot of things. We have a lot of specific sections. And you see those small new icon next to some of the section is because we keep adding a lot of features almost on a monthly basis. And I'm going to go back to that in a minute. So if you dive into the specific section, you can categorize them in 3 main themes. The first one is performance, how you can increase the responsiveness of the UI for end users to make sure page loads quickly, and actually they get their job done very quickly as well. So the second one in maintenance. So it's mostly for admins such as you, how we can make your life a bit easier. So for example, file storage limit, data storage, are you close to your limit? Are you reaching a point where you won't be able to create files anymore? So all those sections in that category are going to help you become a bit more proactive with those maintenance tasks and activities. So last one is, and it's my favorite, it's adoption. So as we know, Salesforce sometimes can be difficult for end users to adopt. People react to change in diverse manners, if we can say. We're gonna start outlining which features and tools you can probably leverage to make the productivity of your end users better. And those are driven from usage we see in your org. So if we recommend S1, for example, so that's going to be based on what's happening in your org, and we're going to ask you maybe to try S1 and deploy S1 to your end users. And we do that for a specific number of things there. So a really great tool, and we build that actually tool very fast. So if I change gear a little, all the tools we've been using to create the optimizer is based on Salesforce technology stack on the Salesforce platform. So I don't know if you guys know Heroku. That's a great platform to build customer-facing apps very quickly, auto-scaling. We can deploy very quickly. So fantastic tool. And if you guys need to build customer-facing apps, I highly recommend to look at Heroku. And Heroku is actually talking to Force.com. You guys are probably familiar to the APIs that Salesforce provides, the tooling API, metadata API. So what I'm gonna say is you could have been the optimizer yourself. So what we are leveraging is technology that is already available to you to take advantage of the Salesforce platform. If we look at the roadmap, we're gonna be working on two main themes in the next few weeks and months. The first one is really to give you more insight about features that you could be leveraging to make your Salesforce and business better. So productivity, how you're gonna make end users more productive in their daily life, and as Leanne mentioned, at the end of the day, it's probably gonna improve the bottom line of your company. You're gonna treat more leads, you're gonna have more opportunities, and you're gonna have better follow-up on your either service task or sales task. So we're gonna do that by adding features for the platform, Service Cloud, Sales Cloud. So across cloud, we're gonna provide recommendation on specific features you could be leveraging. And again, those are usage-based. So we are not just saying to everybody you should use Path, for example. Based on what you're doing today in your org, we're gonna recommend specific features. I mentioned earlier, sometimes you open the report, it could be a bit overwhelming, a bit long, especially if you take over an org. Some of you might have the experience, an old org, you are a new admin, you join a company, it might be a bit messy. We all know that. So the first thing that you can do is actually run the optimizer to get feedback on the org. Everything might be right, and that's fine. You're gonna take some time to do some cleanup. What we're gonna do in the next few weeks and months is to help you prioritize and selective the work that you should be doing right away. What is the most important thing you should fix today? Because you might have, you might not all the time to actually do those maintenance and adoption work. So what are the most important that you should be doing? Later, that's gonna be super exciting because we're actually gonna leverage the cloud and multi-tenancy that Salesforce is known for. And we're gonna leverage all the data that we have to our basically hands. We're gonna do two things. The first one is we're gonna provide scoring and training. Is your org is actually doing better over time? Are you doing a better job at maintaining your org? Are you fighting tech debt? Are you driving adoption? And we're gonna provide real-time feedback on how you're doing. The second thing is super exciting as well. That's peer ranking. How is your org actually measuring against peer in your industry or peer in your company size? Are you doing better? Are you leveraging the same set of features? So you can actually learn from each other. That's going to be further along the road. We don't have exact dates. That's going to probably spring 18 and after, but something we are currently looking at. One thing to mention, Optimizer is off cycle. So you guys are familiar with the 3 releases a year for Salesforce. We know them. With Optimizer, it's completely different. We usually release monthly. We iterate very quickly. We get feedback from you guys, from other customers, from developers, from stakeholders to make the report better. And I'm going to show you how actually you can provide more feedback on making the report even more useful for you guys. So I highly encourage you to run the readiness check at least once a quarter. That's a bare minimum. Sometimes you can probably run it once a month as well. So you can check the success community. We usually do product announcements when we have new releases with what's changed and what is new. So I'm gonna dive a bit into the use cases and how you can leverage a report. So if you start today, you're gonna click the optimizer, and you can do three main things with the optimizer. The first one, I touch base very quickly: proactive maintenance. Sometimes you guys, you are fighters, and you are basically answering calls from the business. You're basically trying just to chase an over-ending list of things to do. With the optimizer, you will be able to take control of that list and maybe try to be a bit more proactive. If somebody gonna ask you to create a field, while with optimizer, you will know if you are close to your field limits, for example. Can you create a field? Maybe not. So the optimizer will tell you that. If you need to remove fields because some are unused, you can also access that information as well. If you're working with your development team, is your new code using an old API version? That might be an issue at some point, and for code maintenance, it's important. So that's just two examples of what you could do for proactive maintenance. The second one is cleanup. So as you might know, sometimes you go in setup, you might have a long list of things that are inactive, unused, and it's cluttering your interface. It's very hard actually to navigate through the forest and to know what's there. So you don't want to touch too much because you might be afraid of breaking things. Optimizer are going to help you in that cleanup work, if you will. And the last one, I said earlier, that's my favorite topic. It's adoption, improving user experience. So you're going to drive end user productivity, and you're going to drive a better business at the end. Do you have too many fields on a page layout? Are those fields being used? If you have fields that are unused, you can remove those unused fields for a page layout, and users will love you for that. Do your user leverage Chatter, Path, and some other great productivity features to make their life easier? So that's what we are providing with Salesforce Optimizer, and you will have those recommendations directly into the report. So I want to chat quickly about Lightning experience and how you can actually leverage the optimizer in the transition to Lightning. You guys probably know about the readiness check, and we have other webinars to talk about how to migrate and transition to Lightning. During the transition, I've been talking to hundreds of customers, and some have maybe older org with some of legacy code and tech debt, things you might not want to move when you are transitioning to Lightning. So you should really take advantage of the optimizer during your transition to make that cleanup. So I call that the Salesforce reboot. You've been working on your Salesforce, and it's great. How you can use and take excuse of the transition to Lightning to make it even better and reboot everything in your company, reboot business processes, reboot end user adoption. And again, Optimizer is a tool of choice for that. You will be able to find that tech debt and improve your maintenance and drive end user adoption. Do you have anything to add, Leanne, on that Lightning topic? I know you've been touring the US on Lightning Now tour.
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely agree. I sort of like to think of using Optimizer as part of your Lightning move as spring cleaning before you move, right? So it's a great item to add to your Lightning checklist. It can really help you clean up your environment, streamline your user interface. You can build the best Lightning experience possible for your end users and avoid, inefficient work as you go through your Lightning steps. So I hope everyone is really excited to run their own Optimizer reports now. And when you do, we really want to hear your feedback. Was the report useful? How can we improve? So post your comments to our success community and tag it with #OptimizerReportFeedback to hear from us. And if you have questions, it's possible that they're answered as well in the help and training, where you can find additional guidance on Optimizer. And that can be found at bit.ly/Optimizer Overview. And that's going to give you all of information around what user permissions and org permissions are required for Optimizer, maybe help with some troubleshooting as well around running your Optimizer report, and lists all of those metrics that are covered. So as you run the Optimizer to prepare for Lightning, make sure to visit the admin.salesforce.com Lightning page for access to tons of admin-specific resources regarding Lightning. That concludes our prepared content from this webinar, and we want to hear from you. So please take a moment to complete a very short survey at bit.ly/AW-survey-optimizer. And I believe with that, it's time for some questions from our webinar group. So the first question we have is, JB, does the Optimizer, does the unused reports section of Optimizer take into account the reports that are used in dashboards as well?
So the usage is actually, for this one, I actually don't know, to be honest. So probably best is to post in the success community. My assumption is yes. We should probably output that directly in the report because those are available individually anyway. So that's probably the case. The reason is when we look at unused reports, we basically look at the last run date, and the last run date, if you run a dashboard, will automatically update also the last run date of the report. So my assumption is yes, but just post in the success committee and I will validate that.
Awesome. Yeah, so we have that posted. That was a question to our webinar group, so we'll just make sure to follow up on that. So if you're interested in the answer, make sure to follow the success community group, and you can see when we provide the answer to that. We have another question. Did I see that this included workflows to Process Builder? If so, I was curious what would be shown. I would love to be able to show how many workflows that can be recreated in Process Builder.
Yeah, so we work on Process Builder if you have basically several triggers on the page. One of the recommendations for Salesforce is actually to have one trigger per object. So you will be able to provide, you will be able to see that recommendation directly in the report as well. So this one is really to facilitate maintenance for admins.
So we have another, this isn't a question, it's a comment in the success community from Daniel. He says, I really love the Optimizer, just needed it so much. So we're glad you like the Optimizer, Daniel. We like it quite a bit as well. And it's definitely a very useful tool for our admins out there. So we did, let's see, get a question around permissions. There's been a couple of questions around permissions. So I just want to encourage everyone, make sure as you're running the Optimizer report, that help and training, improve your Salesforce implementation with Optimizer has the user permissions needed. So like JB, we have a question. I've tried to run the Optimizer a few times and I haven't gotten the report. I checked junk, clutter, search for the word Optimizer with no results. Any recommendations?
Yeah, so just maybe a quick description on what you need to run the Optimizer. So first, permission, absolutely. So when we say sysadmin, we actually mean two things. You need to have modify all data and customize app. So make sure you have those two permissions to run the Optimizer. If you don't receive the report, make sure that you actually get the success screen saying that you're gonna receive the report by email. Some companies have IP restriction. And if you have IP restriction active for your org, you will need to whitelist a few IPs coming from Heroku to authorize the Optimizer to connect to your org so they can perform the analysis. If you click on the landing page Optimizer, you will see a link to help and training. In the help and training, we specify the IP address you will need to whitelist on your profile. If that's still the case and you don't receive an email, make sure your email settings on your org are set to all emails and not just system emails. As I mentioned earlier, the email is sent to you from you. So we're actually using the Salesforce API to send those emails. So it's not a system email per se. It's basically you're sending an email to yourself. So make sure the settings are set to all emails. And that's basically it. Otherwise, if you have other issues, I will probably recommend you to open a case with support.
Okay, great. So those are great resources. Yes, checking the whitelisting. It seems like that might fix, I see a couple questions around email deliverability. So make sure to visit the help and training page and go through the steps to whitelist. So I have a question about roadmap. Are there plans for the optimizer to automate and execute some of the recommendations that it makes, especially the cleanup recommendations?
That's something we are looking at. So currently, Optimizer is really a reporting tool. So we want to let you know what's going on, so you can actually pick and choose the one that are the most relevant to you right away, and you can actually control. Some customers, have like pretty complex deployment processes with, development, sandboxes, UAT, and so on. So that's something we are investigating, but it's not on the short-term roadmap.
So we've got another question. How long does the optimizer usually take to run?
So this one is like, how long is a piece of a string question? And the reason it can take anywhere from 5 minutes to 5 hours, and maybe more depending on the size of your org. So if your org is like millions of objects, pretty complex, that's going to take a long time.
Great. And then another question that we have, and it came up a couple different times in different formats, but we have a question about, will all of our customers eventually be on Lightning?
Okay, so this one is a bit off topic, but I work a lot on Lightning and I love Lightning. If you guys are not on Lightning, I highly encourage you to look at Lightning. And the first thing you need to do is run the readiness check in Salesforce Setup. That's a one-click assessment, same as the optimizer. That's gonna give you a step-by-step instruction on what you could be doing now. I don't want to go into details, but you should start your journey today and not delay too much. If that's okay, that's gonna take you 6 months. To answer the question, there is no plan currently to remove Classic. We're gonna support Classic for, probably for a very, very long time. So there is no plan to discontinue Classic at this stage.
Wonderful. Thanks. Thank you for taking that question. I know it's a little bit off topic for our actual feature overview today. However, it was something that came up, so we wanted to make sure to answer that because it did come up a few different places. Let's see. Oh, we've got another comment. Great feature, very good for preventive maintenance. So I have a question. Let's see, we've got one more question, and it's actually, no, that's a feedback. Is the field usage per object based on field trip results?
Yes and no. So field trip, so that's an App Exchange package. If you guys don't know it, I highly recommend to install it. Great app, and you can actually have more insight about fields and maintenance of fields. Usage is one of them. So yes, because we basically use the same metadata to compute and to analyze the results. That's the optimizer don't leverage field trip per se. So what you're gonna see in the report is very specific to optimizer, and we look at just the specific top objects on a specific time frame. And it's basically written at the top of that section what we are looking at.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, JB, for giving us such a great overview into how to run an optimizer report and those use cases and metrics and answering questions. And thank you all of the awesome admins who joined our webinar today. Please make sure to fill out a survey at bit.ly/AW-optimizer. Let us know how you liked it. We love hearing from you. And again, the recording and slides for this will be posted at bit.ly/AW-Salesforce Optimizer, which is the page where you registered. So thank you, awesome admins, and we'll see you next time.